everyone, I'm Mrs. Bogle. In the last chapter there was going to be a great mouse party, so let's find out what's happened next. The great mouse party took place in a store cupboard at the back of the patisserie. Gaspard used his nose to open the heavy door and Winston gasped at the sight that greeted him. Bags of flour and sugar and gift boxes for the macaroons had been pushed to the side and several of the floorboards lifted up to create a sunken dance floor. Strings of fairy lights glowed in loops, and in the corner a band was playing jazzy Christmas songs on a miniature mouse-sized instruments. A fine sprinkling of icing sugar was falling from a flour shaker suspended high above the ballroom, and under it mice in their fanciest clothes twirled around, gossiping and squeaking with excitement. And then there were cakes. Set out in neat little rows were hundreds of parcels, each contained the most wonderful cakes and biscuits Winston had ever seen. He nearly lifted off his feet as he sniffed the scrumptious scent of raspberry, caramel, cinnamon and chocolate. Next to him, Coco clapped her paws for quiet, and the band immediately stopped playing. "Good evening, dear friends and colleagues," she cried. "It's with great pleasure that I welcome you to this year's ball." Everyone cheered and clapped, but Coco held up her paw, shushing the room instantly silent again. "Now, before our festivities begin," she continued, "our new friend Winston here needs our help to solve a very curious mystery. I want you all to listen very carefully." She gently pushed Winston to the front of the crowd. Hundreds of faces looked up at him as he shyly explained why he was there. As he told them everything he could remember, the bakery mice of Paris crowded round him, eager to find out more and offer their advice. They were all very kind and lovely, but Winston didn't recognise any of them. He would know the mouse he was looking for when he found them, because he would know them by heart. "Perhaps some cake would help," said a mouse with very pink cheeks. "Cake is always good when you're trying to remember something." The mice agreed. Cake of any kind was good for most problems, so Winston was presented with a plate after plate of delectable treats to nibble. There were tiny fruit tarts and crunchy biscuits. There were wobbling puddings and cakes made from what looked like thousands of thin layers of sponge cake and cream. Winston dutifully nibbled each one. They were all fabulous, but none of them transported him back to the strange candlelit room in his mind. Eventually, Coco took charge again. "Enough," she said. "You all know that the best cake for remembering things are Madeleines." And with a great rustling of paper, she unwrapped her own box and gave Winston one of the golden shell-shaped sponge cakes she'd made. She dipped it in a thimble of lime-flavoured drink and handed it to Winston, who tucked it in eagerly. Whether it was the Madeleine or the rustling of the paper that did it, Winston didn't know. But the moment he squeezed his eyes shut, whoosh! He was suddenly back in his memories once more. He was surrounded again by the now familiar flickering light of the candle, and there was a delicious baking smell again. But as his whiskers twitched, he realised that there were new smells in his memories. "There's peppermint," he muttered aloud, and a crispy dry smell, like paper. Yes, it must be paper, because there was a sound of rustling too. Then the gentle sound of the lullaby filled his ears. "And there's a song again," said Winston, still with his eyes closed, remembering. The music seemed to call to him, and the more he listened, the more something became clear. "I can hear the words properly this time." The mice shuffled closer to him. Winston opened his eyes, blinking himself back from his memories and into the real world. All the bakery mice were looking at him expectantly. "Well," said Coco Gatto. But Winston shook his head. "I can't make out the words," he said, "but they aren't in any language I know of." Great twitterings and squeakings went through the crowd of mice. "How very curious this mystery is." "You'll have to sing it to us," said Coco. "Us bakery mice have travelled all over the world. One of us might recognise the language." Everyone stood waiting for him to sing, but Winston suddenly felt shy again. The tip of his nose and his ears went bright pink. Gaspard looked down on the scene, could see Winston needed a little bit of encouragement, so he leaned in and gave his tiny friend a nudge with his nose. It did make Winston feel better, so he started to sing. His little voice rang out around the near silent bakery. When he was done, he saw all the mice were looking perplexed. None of them recognised the words Winston was singing. "Can't you remember anything else?" someone asked. Winston squeezed his eyes shut once more and tried to remember. There's the music," he said, "and the nice food smells, and the sound of rustling, and the smell of paper." He was about to open his eyes again when something changed. "Wait!" he said, and the mice surrounding him gathered closer still. Looking all over the ballroom for the floor above, Gaspar dropped his head lower to get closer to the action. As Winston listened to the song in his mind, his heart began to beat like a drum as a new feeling washed over him. It was a warm and sweet like Madeline. It felt safe and like coming home. The haze lifted, and in his memory, Winston looked into the face that was singing to him. He opened his eyes. "I know who's singing to me," he whispered. "Who?" gasped the mice, bustling closer. Winston